Welcome to JonGetsGames. Today, I'll be doing a full 3-player playthrough of Farmageddon, the Farm Fresh edition. In this game, players will take on the role of farmers who are trying to plant the best crops, give them enough fertilizer and time before they can harvest them to have the most money at the end of the game. This is a hand management style game that has a good bit of take that in the form of the farmer cards that you can play to either help out your own crops or mess with your opponents from mild to extreme degrees. I will explain the game as we're going, so let's jump right in. Here we have the starting setup for a 3-player game. These colored tokens right here don't actually come with the game, they're just going to allow me to differentiate between the players. We'll be playing as the red player. All of us start with 3 of these crop cards here and 4 of the farmer cards. So with that, let's go into the first turn and we'll begin it. The first thing we always do at the beginning of a turn is draw 2 more crop cards from the top of the deck. And next up, we're going to take actions. We can take as many fertilize and plant crop actions as we want, but we're only allowed to use these farmer cards that are in our hand up to 2 times on a turn, so let's look at what our options are. We can essentially look at our hand of cards as 2 separate hands. We have a set of farmer cards and a set of crop cards here. We'll look at the farmer cards in a minute, but going into these crop cards, we see a similar anatomy across them. We have this dollar value in the very top left, which shows us how much money we get if we're able to successfully harvest these particular crops. And that really is the goal of the game. We want to have the most money when the game is over, and that happens when we go through the entire deck of crop cards that we just drew from. So underneath that, we have a little dirt mound with a number on it, and this is the amount of fertilizer that's required to actually harvest these crops. And the last thing that we need in order to harvest these is time. We are going to be playing these crops down. For instance, I think it's a good idea. Let's play this grumpy melon down. It's worth a lot of points. And we are going to be fertilizing. In fact, we must fertilize at least one thing on every turn. But we're only able to harvest cards if we did not plant them on this given turn, unless it says otherwise through some in-game mechanic. So at the end of the turn, we will harvest all cards in front of us that are maxed out on their fertilizer as long as we didn't plant that this turn. So we have a little bit of a waiting game. We're going to put this down. And unfortunately, those farmer cards can do a lot of things that mess with our cards. They could steal it. They could just discard it. There's lots of nasty things that could happen. So I think what we should probably do is hedge our bets by putting some other stuff down as well. For instance, this Jazz coffee bean here. Now, there's another difference between these 2 cards. If you look at this last symbol right here, we have a little corn cob, and then here we have a kind of crazy carrot with arms sticking out the side, and that means that these are Franken crops and these are regular crops. And the only real difference is the Franken crops have special text on the bottom that lets us do different things. So let's go ahead and put this jazzy coffee bean down, and we see down at the bottom it just says you draw 1 farmer card when you plant this card. So that's its special effect. We'll put that down and we'll draw another farmer card from the top of the stack. I think at this point, let's look at the farmer card options we have available in our hand. The actions that are available to us on these farmer cards are varied. For instance, let's just go through them. This first one says irrigated land, and in the bottom it says you place this on a crop that you planted on this turn. The player who harvests this crop is going to score this irrigated land, which is an extra 3 points. So we would potentially be able to slide this underneath either one of these, and if we did that, we would increase the value of that crop by 3. So essentially this would be 5 money for the person who actually harvests this crop. But maybe if we did that, we're kind of doubling down a little bit too much on having these really good cards, because there are also cards in this deck, we have one of them, like this Thresher, that are going to mess with opponents, and our opponents could definitely do this to us. This one says, clear any planted crop, all fertilizer on the crop is added to the crop owner's hand. So when you clear a crop, it just gets discarded from the game, and usually the fertilizer goes away too, but the fertilizer would at least come back to our hand. But this irrigation, if we put it on here and it got cleared, this would also get cleared as well, so we would not get that back. So it is a bit of a push your luck game, really. How much do you commit to a single crop to try and get a bunch of points versus spreading things out so that if people mess with you a bit, you still get points as well. So let's look at the next thing we have, which is called pesticides. We see a -5 points in the top corner, and this one says that the crop owner scores this when they score the card. So it just reduces the money you get for that scored crop by 5. There's no reason for us to play this right now because our opponents haven't played anything yet. And let's see, lastly in our hand, we have 2 of these bumper crop cards. And this one has a bunch of text. But what it says is you place this onto a crop that you already have, but you have to discard another one of your farmer cards. So it has a pretty big cost to do it. But then it says that the player who harvests this crop returns all crop cards played as fertilizer on this crop card back to their hand. So this is a way to really boost your hand and pull a bunch of fertilizer back. I don't think we want to play any of these at this moment. We're going to keep these in our back pocket for future turns. So when we come back to our crop cards, we see we have these 2 sassy wheat, which are just kind of plain boring, not very aggressive cards. If we'd play these down, it'd be easy to fertilize them and get some money, and they probably wouldn't be big targets for opponents to try and grab from us. You'll notice that they are worth 4 money, and this Jazzy Coffee Bean is worth 5, but takes 2 fertilizer. I think that's because well, we got a bonus for getting that extra farmer card, so that's why the fertilizer to victory point or money conversion ratio isn't quite as good as these. And lastly, we have this Riled Beans card, which is a Frankencrop. And if we look down here, it says if placed as a fertilizer, you actually turn it around 180 degrees and it counts as 2 fertilizer. So we see these 2 little symbols here. And I think this is a good time to note that on the back of all these cards is a single fertilizer indication, and this is how you show fertilization happening. And as I mentioned before, you always must fertilize at least one thing on your turn. So I think what we should do is take this Sassy Wheat, use it as fertilizer, and then let's go ahead and save these in our hand for the next turn, where we could potentially drop these down, drop this one down for 2, and maybe just get this Grumpy Melon made immediately. Our opponents might not be as concerned about clearing it if they think it's going to take a bunch of work for us to actually get it fertilized. So I think with that point, let's go ahead and end the action phase of our turn. So we now move into the last phase of the turn, which is turn end. We're going to draw 1 new farmer card. Then we're going to harvest any cards in front of us that are fully fertilized that we did not play this turn, which does not count for any of ours. And we're going to discard down to 6 crop cards. So we're going to get this farmer card right here. It is a foreclosure card. Let's see, the bottom says you can give another player any 2 crop cards from your hand, but then you steal one of their planted crop from that player, including any cards on there. So that's potentially really good. You get to grab a really good crop, but you do have to give them crop cards from your hand. And then we have to discard down to 6 cards, but we only have 2 of these crop cards. There is no hand limit for those farmer cards, so our turn is now over. The green player draws 2 cards into their hand. Next up, they plant not 1, but 2 Sluggo Corns down. This is a basic crop card, but just 2 fertilizer gets them 7 money, which is a pretty good conversion ratio. And now they are going to go ahead and fertilize this one right here, which satisfies the requirement of doing at least 1. And they've decided not to play any of their farmer cards, and they're done with their crop cards, so they're going to go into the end phase, where they're going to draw 1 more farmer card. They don't harvest anything, and they're obviously below the hand limit of 6 crop cards. Blue starts their turn by drawing 2 crop cards. Blue starts their actions off by playing the Frankencrop Flame Fruit. We see down here it says that you may clear any other planted crop when the flame fruit is planted, so it just lights something else on fire. And considering the green player needs only 3 more fertilizer to get 14 money, versus us needing a total of 4 fertilizer to get 15 money, they decide green is a slightly bigger threat. They're going to clear this, so it gets discarded, and green player just loses out on it. Next up, they do their required fertilization. And with that, they're done taking actions. So with their end turn, they're going to grab a new farmer. They don't harvest anything, and they only have 3 crop cards, so there's nothing to discard. So now it's our turn. We draw 2 new crop cards, add them into our hand. We see we got another Sassy Wheat and a Zombo Weed, which is a Frankencrop, and down at the bottom we see it says that if Zombo Weed is cleared, its owner draws 1 farmer card and returns Zombo Weed back to their hand. So that's actually pretty cool. This is a neat one because people are not really going to want to clear it. And we have this irrigated land, so we might want to actually put this down with irrigated land because it's more likely that the irrigated land would go through. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that. So we'll put the Zombo Weed down, and then we can play up to 2 of these farmer cards per turn. So we'll slide this over here. And somebody could obviously still clear this, but if they do, we'll get a new farmer card and we'll get the Zombo Weed back again. So I think this is a pretty good combo. But let's look over here and I think do that plan we had last turn. Let's play this Riled Rice. It has 2 fertilization symbols on it when it's played as fertilizer, so we can slide that in up there. And now we just need 1 more fertilizer for the spot. Let's go ahead and spend this Sassy Wheat here. And why not? Let's spend this other Sassy Wheat to fully fertilize this one so that we can harvest both of these and get 15 money. That's a pretty good situation. But before we finish our action phase, we can spend 1 more farmer card. And I think let's go ahead and do one of these bumper crops. In order to play this card, we do have to discard another farmer card. Let's get rid of this pesticide card. I think that's a little bit less interesting than the other ones. So pesticides gets discarded. And then bumper crop, remember, if when that crop gets harvested, all of the fertilizer on it comes back to the hand of the player who did it. And we're about to harvest this. So let's go ahead and slide that in there. And it means we're going to get the Riled Rice back, which is really good for fertilizing big things. We're now done taking action, so we get to draw a new farmer card. It says Crop Insurance. Down at the bottom it says you can place this onto a planted crop we own, and if we lose ownership of the crop or it's cleared, we get to score these 6 points for the insurance. So that's actually pretty cool. And now we get to harvest the crops that we have in our area. Obviously, Zombo Weed is not fertilized. We wouldn't be able to harvest it anyway, but both of these are fully fertilized with 3 and 2, so all this stuff is going to go away. However, this bumper crop gets discarded and brings these 2 cards back into our hand. This fertilizer goes away, and we just scored ourselves 15 money, and the points in this game are private, so I'm going to probably actually leave our score face up, and I'll leave the scores for the other 2 players face down, and I'm just going to put it underneath the player marker like this so that we can see how many points we have. Green begins by drawing 2 crop cards. Green begins by playing a Stinky Truffle, which is a Frankencrop. We see down here it says draw 2 crop cards when planted, choose one to add to your hand, and give one to an opponent. So they're going to look at both of these. They're going to keep this one and give the other one to the blue player, probably because we just scored so many points. Green now plays another Frankencrop. This is the Communal Pumpkin. We see down here it says, players who fertilize a communal pumpkin they do not own draw 1 farmer card for each card played. So we can see that the ratio of 3 to 8 is not amazing, but it's going to incentivize opponents to fertilize this card because they get a farmer card, but if they do that, they're going to be helping the green player get closer to this 8 money. Green must fertilize something, and in fact, they're going to fertilize this Sluggo Corn twice. And at this point, they actually decide they are not going to be playing any of their, 6 farmer cards. They're going to save all those. There's no hand limit. They're going to move on to the next phase, which means they draw another farmer card into their hand, and they're going to harvest. The only one they can harvest is this Sluggo Corn, so that's 7 money for them, and these get discarded. Blue begins by drawing 2 crop cards. The first thing the blue does is play this farmer card, Darn Gophers. We see that down the bottom it says they can steal 1 farmer card or fertilizer card placed on any unprotected planted crop and add it to their hand. So this is going to get discarded. And they decide they want to steal our irrigated land farmer card from our Zombo Weed. That's a bummer. Next, they decide to plant this Wary Squash. It's a regular crop. It's just a lot of money, 15 money for 4 fertilizer. And after that, they're going to do their second farmer card, which is the irrigated land they just stole from us. They're going to slide it under here, which means this is actually going to be 18 money worth if they are able to actually harvest this card. And they are likely to be able to do that because they are now going to fertilize this card with a Mirror Bean. So this is a Frankencrop. If we look down at the bottom of the card, we see that it says, if placed as a fertilizer, place it face up and rotate it 180 degrees. This fertilized crop is protected. We see this little blue shield is the protection symbol. So we put this on there, and what that means is that nothing can happen to this Wary Squash anymore. Previous things are okay to stay on there, but that means that positive things can't happen. They can't put more good stuff onto this besides fertilizer. They can obviously fertilize, but it also means that none of their opponents can steal this or clear it or anything. So they're pretty much guaranteed to get these 18 points as soon as they get 3 more fertilizer down on it. And for their last action, they're just going to plant down a Sluggo Corn. They are done taking their action, so they're going to draw a new farmer card into their hand and harvest. The only one they can harvest is the Flame Fruit because they planted both of these this turn, and they're obviously not fertilized enough, but the Flame Fruit is, it only took 1. They put that fertilizer down last turn, so that's going to score them 3 points. And they do not have as many points as everybody else, but their next turn plan looks pretty darn solid. They might not actually get this done next turn, but when this evaluates, it's going to get them a bunch of money. We begin our turn by drawing 2 more crop cards. We got another Sluggo Corn and a Zippy Carrot. This is a Frankencrop, and down at the bottom we see it says, you may harvest Zippy Carrot the same turn it's planted. Well, that's pretty good. I mean, it is 2 fertilizer for 4 money, so not the best ratio, but if you potentially throw some farmer cards down there, this could be a pretty good thing to plant. Unfortunately, when we actually look at the farmer cards that we have right now, I don't think they really apply to the Zippy Carrot at the moment. We have this crop insurance, well, that doesn't apply because this is something we potentially cash out this turn. The bumper crop lets you pull the fertilizer back into your hand, but which is kind of nice actually to play this down. It costs 2 fertilizer, but we get it immediately back, so it makes the penalty of playing this card not as bad. But in order to play the bumper card, we're going to have to discard another card from our hand. You know, maybe actually I take it back. This Foreclosed, it's nice because it lets you steal a card from another player, but you have to give up 2 crop cards to do it, which is quite a bit of points when you think about spending these crop cards to actually fertilize things. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's put the Zippy Carrot down onto the board, and then we are going to stick the bumper crop down onto it. And in order to do that, we have to discard. We're going to get rid of this foreclosure here, so that means the fertilizer on the Zippy Carrot will come back to their hand. So I think we may as well just do that on this turn right now. We can just throw the Wild Rice down in there. That is worth 2 fertilizers, so this is now fully satisfied. And we could, let's see, let's go ahead and put this Sluggo Corn down. I think we might want to actually get a Sassy Wheat made on the next turn. In fact, let's go ahead and plant this Sassy Wheat over here because the ratio is pretty darn good. 1 fertilizer to 4 is certainly better than 2 to 7. And let's fertilize this Zombo Weed over here. Our little gambit to hopefully have that irrigation go through and have nobody mess with us didn't quite work out when somebody just stole the irrigation from us. And I think at that point, well, this is our hand. We just have 2 farmer cards and no crop cards. We're kind of dumped out, although we will get this Wild Rice back. I think we should stop with our actions. So we go into our end of turn mode. We're going to get a new farmer card. It is, oh, pesticides. Okay, that's pretty good, especially maybe to throw down on the blue player, considering they're making so many points right now. This can kind of check them by making them lose some points. And now we can harvest. So normally we could not harvest Zippy Carrot, but its ability lets us. Both of these have their fertilizer satisfied. So this is going to get discarded. The Zombo Weed is going to get us 3 points. And the Zippy Carrot is going to get scored for 4 points. I'll go ahead and stack it kind of like this in our area so we can see how much money we have. The Wild Rice comes back to our hand due to this bumper crop, and we're just left with this Sassy Wheat for next turn. Green starts by drawing 2 crop cards. They have a ton of farmer cards, but not much in the crop department. Green starts by playing a Wary Squash down, and this turn is actually going to look pretty familiar to one we saw before. They have an irrigated land in their hand, and they are going to place this down. It's one of the 2 farmer cards they can place on their turn, and they're able to place this because they just planted the Wary Squash on this turn. And guess what? They also have a Mirror Bean, just like the blue players, so they've set up the same exact, pretty darn good combo. They're going to slide this in here. That is one of the 4 fertilizer that they need over here, and that's pretty much a guaranteed 18 points they're going to get once they're able to actually harvest this. The last thing they decide to do is to fertilize this Stinky Truffle as well. The ratio of 1 to 5 with the fertilizer is really good, and they want to get this, get in on this, cash it in before somebody maybe messes with it. So once they've done all that, they have finished their actions phase. They're going to go to the end of turn. They're going to get yet another farmer card for their hand. They only played 1 in that turn, and now they are going to harvest. It's just going to be this Stinky Truffle right here, so this gets discarded, and that 5 money gets added into their pile. Blue begins by drawing 2 crop cards. With Blue's first action, they are going to plant the Bodacious Broccoli. This is a Frankencrop, and down at the bottom it says that you draw 1 crop card when planted, and as we can see, the ratio of 3 fertilizer to 8 is not amazing, but getting another crop card into their hand is certainly good. And now they want to play this farmer card called Crop Rotation. We see down at the bottom it says you clear a planted crop that you own and did not plant this turn, plant a new crop, and you can harvest it on this turn. So this just gets discarded, and they have to clear something they didn't plant this turn, so they can't do Bodacious Broccoli. So this Sluggo Corn is going to get cleared. And now they have to plant a crop that they can harvest this turn, and it is another Wary Squash. They are going huge on these, and in fact, since they just allowed themselves the ability to harvest this turn, they are just going to go hard on it and put 4 fertilizer directly into it. They're going to let this one kind of hang out, and they'll figure that one out later. They only need 3 to cash that in, so they're going to put all 4 of these down. That's actually all of their crop cards. They just have farmer cards left in their hand. They are done with their action phase. They don't want to spend any more of these. They could do 2 on a turn. They have potentially 1 more they could play, but they're not going to. So they're going to draw a new farmer card into their hand, and now they're going to harvest. It's just going to be this Wary Squash, so all 4 of this fertilizer cards are going to get discarded, and this 15 money is going to get added into Blue's bank. It's back to us, and we get to draw 2 new crop cards. We only have 3 at the moment. We just drew a Grumpy Melon and a Sassy Wheat, so let's see what our options are. We have a Sassy Wheat down here already with that really good conversion ratio, so we could definitely cash that in. And when we look at our farmer cards, we have this crop insurance, which is nice. It lets us get 6 money if anything, if that specific crop gets cleared. This Thresher is interesting. We could potentially use this to maybe clear that Bodacious Broccoli that the blue player has, because man, they have a lot of points already. In fact, you know what? Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. Let's use this Thresher. Down at the bottom it says clear any planted crop. All fertilizer on the crop goes back to the owner's hand, but as you can see, this broccoli has no fertilizer, so it's just going to get discarded. Next up, let's go ahead and plant another one of these Sassy Wheat cards down. We have no reason to really diversify our specific crops at the moment, and so having multiples of these is not a bad thing. And I think let's plant this Wild Rice just as a crop. You'll notice that it takes 0 fertilizer to actually make this happen, and 0 to 4 is a very good ratio. So when we put this down, it actually makes it maybe a bit of a target. So I think for our second farmer card play, let's go ahead and put the crop insurance down on this. So that means that if we lose ownership of this crop, or if it's cleared, we're going to pay out 6 money. So what that means is probably nobody is going to mess with this, so it pretty much guarantees the 4 money for us on the following turn when we can actually harvest this. But we do have to do some fertilizer on our turn. So I think the last thing we should do is take this big old Grumpy Melon. We're going to use them as fertilizer for this Sassy Wheat right here. We are down to just a single farmer card in our hand, and I think we're done with our actions. So we get to draw a new farmer card, and this one says Crop Rotation. Oh, this is the one that lets you clear one that you already have in order to play another one and then harvest it on that same turn. It's potentially interesting as we're going forward, although we need to see what crop cards we're going to grab. And now we get to go ahead and harvest this Sassy Wheat right here. So we'll add that in. And at the moment, we've got 26 bucks. The green player starts their turn with 0 crop cards, and they're going to go ahead and draw 2 like normal. They'll begin by playing a Stinky Truffle down. This is their second one. They already harvested one earlier on, and once again, this one allows them to draw 2 cards from the top of the deck. They're going to get to keep one of these and then give another one to an opponent. They decide to keep this one, and they're going to give us a Grumpy Melon. Next up, they decide to play this farmer card. It says Farm Futures, and down the bottom it says they can draw 2 crop cards or score Farm Futures. If it scored, they would add $1 per unique crop in their score pile, but at the moment they have so few crop cards, they are going to play this in order to just draw 2 more from the top of the deck. And for their second out of 2 possible farm card plays, they are going to play one of these Darn Gopher cards. Again, down at the bottom, it lets them steal 1 farmer or fertilizer card and on a placed unprotected planted crop, and they get to add it into their hand. The only one available on the entire board is this crop insurance, so they're going to grab it. They have to fertilize at least once on their turn, and they decide to slide this one down onto their Wary Squash, so they'll need 2 more. But at this point, they are going to stop with their actions. They are going to go into the end phase of their turn. They're going to get a new farmer card, and when they go to harvest, they don't actually have any legal harvesting targets for the moment, so that's just going to finish up their turn. Just like green, the blue player begins their turn with 0 crop cards. And of course, like normal, they draw 2 at the start. Blue's first action will be playing this Thresher Farmer card. It says they clear any planted crop. All fertilizer on the crop is added back to its owner's hand. And unfortunately for us, they are getting scared of the amount of crops that we have been able to harvest, and they are going to thresh this. We lost our insurance from the green player, and now we get threshed from this. This wild rice, well, we were able to fertilize 2 things with it. I think we did a pretty good job with this card. And it appears that blue and green are continuing to kind of follow in each other's footsteps. Blue is also going to play this Farm Futures, and they're also going to play it to draw 2 crop cards. Blue now plants a slug of corn into their fields, and they're going to throw a single fertilizer down into their Wary Squash. They're just kind of slowly building it up. At this point, they're done with taking action, so they're going to draw a farmer card, and they have nothing that they can successfully harvest, so their turn is over. We begin our turn with only 3 cards total, and we're going to draw 2 crop cards, and ooh, this is a new one. This is a Franken crop. It says Helpful Tater. It's a 1 fertilizer for 5 money, and down at the bottom it says, if you fertilize an opponent's crop with the Helpful Tater, we draw 2 crop cards or 1 farmer card. Ooh, this is very interesting because we could use this Helpful Tater to fertilize green's Communal Pumpkin, and when we do that, we would draw a farmer card. I think this is just too good. Let's do that. So this Helpful Tater is going to get flipped over. We're going to fertilize this over here. The Communal Pumpkin is going to get us 1 farmer card, and with that Helpful Tater, we can take another farmer card or 2 crop cards. I think let's go ahead and take the crop cards. So we just picked up another Grumpy Melon, a Sassy Wheat, and a Thresher. That really helped bolster our hand, and I think before we do anything else on our farming area, let's go ahead and play this Pesticides, which will be -5 points to the player who harvests that specific crop. And let's just go ahead and add it into this Communal Pumpkin that we just fertilized. We don't want to help the green player out too much. This is 8 money after all if they were able to successfully do it. Well, now it's only going to be worth 3 money, and it needs 2 more fertilizer to go, so it's a lot less of a problem for people to go ahead and fertilize this. They're just not helping the green player out that much. We're done playing farmer cards for this round. We've already done 2, and I think at this point, let's maybe try to just keep doing these Sassy Wheats and see how we do with these low value cards versus the really high value cards that our opponents are doing that have worse ratios on them. So we'll put that down there. And speaking of high value, worse ratio cards, our hand is full of the other ones. Let's take this Grumpy Melon, and even though we have technically done a fertilizing action, we don't need to do another one. Let's go ahead and fertilize this so that we can cash it in and harvest it on this given turn. And I think let's just save these 2 cards and see what we can do in future rounds. We still have this crop rotation, so we could potentially punt this Sassy Wheat out and just drop one of these down and cash it in on that one given turn, which would be potentially nice if we are really close to the end of the game. So let's go ahead and pass. We're going to draw a new farmer card. It is, oh, this is a new one, Genetic Superworm. Let's see this text down at the bottom. It says you place any planted crop, place on any planted crop. All farmer cards placed on the crop, including this card, reduce the required fertilizer by 1. So, wow, that's very interesting. This is essentially a fertilizer. Oh, in fact, you see that little icon right there, and then other things like irrigation and whatnot would also help fertilize. That's a pretty cool combo. It doesn't really work with anything we have just yet, but it could. So we go ahead and do our harvesting. It's just going to be this 1 Sassy Wheat. We add that in over there, and I believe we're now at 30 bucks. As always, the green player is going to start off by drawing 2 crop cards. For the first action, they are going to plant a Jazzy Coffee Bean, and the text down here says that they can go ahead and draw a farmer card when this Franken crop is planted. Next up, green decides they're going to play pesticides onto our sassy wheat. They see we're just scoring all of these harvesting cards. They're going to slide this down here so that sassy wheat is now, wow, it's actually worth -1 point if we were to harvest it. And now they've decided to fertilize. They're going to throw one onto this stinky truffle right here. And it's worth noting, it hasn't come up yet, but you're never allowed to over-fertilize a specific plant. So you could not put another fertilizer down onto this if for some reason that made sense for you to do. And they're going to take these two here and slide them onto this wary squash, which is going to get them the 4 fertilizer they need. At this point, they are done playing all their cards, even though they have this relatively large hand of farmer cards still. They don't think it makes sense to play any of these at the moment, so they move on. They draw another farmer card into their hand, and now they can harvest. Both of these are harvestable at this point because they have all 4 here, so this is going to get discarded. They're going to score this 18 points right here, as well as the 5 points right there. That is a humongous, let's see here, 23-point harvesting phase for them. Definitely pretty darn good for the green player. Blue begins by drawing 2 crop cards. Now that this communal pumpkin has pesticides on it, the blue player feels like they really would like a different farmer card than the ones they have, so they're going to fertilize this one for the green player in order to draw a farmer card from the stack. Next up, blue has decided to play this farmer card called Bumper Crop. It says that they must discard another farmer card from their hand. They're going to get rid of crop insurance, and then they can put this down onto one of their planted crops, and when it actually gets harvested, the person who harvests it is going to get all of the fertilizer back into their hands. So they'll slide this down onto the sluggo corn, and unsurprisingly, they're now going to fertilize it twice. And at this point, they are done taking actions on their turn. They could do one more farmer card, but they decide they don't want to play any of these 3 they have. They have only 1 more crop card in their hand. They move on to the end phase. They're going to draw another farmer card into their hand, and now they're going to harvest. They still don't have enough to harvest this wary squash over here. They're just kind of stalling with it, but this sluggo corn is good. This 2 fertilizer is going to come back into their hand because of this bumper crop, so that's pretty nice. They did cost them essentially 2 farmer cards to do that, but it lets them keep all those crop cards in their hand, which are really good for cashing out points, obviously. So they're going to slide this over there. They only have 3 things cashed out so far, but they do still have this $18 crop right here waiting to get harvested. I'm sure they're going to get to it relatively soon, and with that, their turn's over. It's back to us. We have 2 crop cards and 3 farmer cards. We go ahead and draw 2 more. We got another sassy wheat. Man, we are getting lots of those. And a flame fruit. We saw that early in the game. It's one where when you play it, you can clear another crop. In fact, that might be a good thing for us to do, but considering what has changed since our last turn, we now have pesticides on the sassy wheat, so they're actually worth -1 point to us. So I think we definitely don't want to be actually harvesting this at any point, but it does become a perfect target for this crop rotation card, which has us clear something that we planted not on this turn, and then we can then plant something and harvest that something with the same turn. Let's take a look and see if it makes sense to get any of these big boys down. And you know what, since people have been targeting our sassy wheat like crazy, let's just go ahead and use this crop rotation card. So we're going to discard it. It's going to get rid of this cleared from our field, and we're going to put this sassy wheat down and fertilize it on this turn. I think let's put this wary squash down. It just needs too much fertilizer to get done. At this point in the game, it looks like this is we probably only have a couple turns left because, as we can see, the crop deck is getting relatively low, and once we go through this whole deck, everybody else is going to have 1 extra turn. So yeah, probably just a couple turns left. So let's get rid of this wary squash by turning it into fertilizer for the sassy wheat, and then let's plant this flame fruit so that we can go ahead and target green a little bit. At this point, we're not actually sure who is doing better between green and the blue player, but right now we have no targets for this flame fruit on the blue player because this wary squash over here has that mirrored protection on it. So we're just going to clear this jazzy coffee bean. Green won't be able to harvest it. Speaking of harvesting, I don't think it makes sense for us to take any more actions, so we're going to go ahead and draw a new farmer card. Oh my gosh, it's another genetic superworm. That's actually kind of great for the last rounds of the game. It's like a couple more crop cards worth of fertilizer to maybe get something like this Grumpy Melon done. And then let's go ahead and harvest. It's just going to be the sassy wheat, which we can do because of the crop rotation. So that's going to give us 4 more points. Green begins by drawing 2 crop cards into their hand. For green's first action, they are going to play this farmer card called Dust Bowl, and this is a pretty big one. It says discard a farmer card from their hand, and then they can clear all planted crops except those with protection. Then discard all protection cards from all planted crops. So what that means is, first they're going to have to discard a farmer card from their hand, and they're going to get rid of this foreclosed card. And then the Dust Bowl is going to clear this. It's going to clear all of these from their own area, And down here, this Wary Squash is protected, so what it's going to do is it clears off the protection. This is, I believe, the only way that protection can be nullified, and it leaves this Wary Squash pretty vulnerable at this point. The blue player is looking pretty nervous, and they should be, because the green player can play one more farmer card, and they still have quite a few. At this point, they're going to bust out this one. It's a second Dust Bowl. The green player was able to get 2 of them, and we know how this works. They have to discard another card. They're going to get rid of this crop insurance from their hand. It clears everything from both of here, but we don't have anything to lose, except this Wary Squash down here is no longer protected by the Mirror Bean. This gets washed away, and that is 18 money that the blue player lost by essentially playing too, well, they kind of pushed their luck too long. They let this stay out there for way too long, and now that decision really bites them. Now that all that carnage is over, the green player decides they are going to plant a Bodacious Broccoli. This is the one that lets them draw a crop card from the top of the deck when it's played down. They have to fertilize at least once, so they will, and they are also going to plant this Sassy Wheat into their field. At this point, they are going to pass. They are going to get a new farmer card. They've done a lot of destruction with these so far on this turn, and their turn is over. Blue now begins their turn by drawing 2 crop cards. Blue begins their actions by planting a Helpful Tater down into their field. This is the one where if you fertilize somebody else's things, you can draw more cards, but they've decided the 1 fertilizer to 5 money ratio is pretty darn good for them. They are then going to spend this Irrigation Farmer card, which essentially says that whoever harvests this is going to get 3 extra money. And finally, they're going to throw some crop insurance on this. So if somebody is to clear it or steal it, they'd get 6 money. So essentially it's going to be 8 money if they're able to harvest it, or 6 money if anybody does anything to it. So they're trying to hedge their bets after losing that $18 value Wary Squash that really hit them very hard. It might have cost them the game. We'll see how that ends up panning out. The game is getting pretty close to being over at this point. At this point, blue has not fertilized anything yet, and if they don't fertilize one of their own things, they'd be forced to fertilize the green player, and that's the last thing they want to do. So they're going to go ahead and plant this Sluggo corn. They don't want to fertilize this one just yet, but they are going to fertilize this Sluggo corn they just planted, and at that point, they've decided they are good. They are going to end their turn. They're going to draw a farmer card from the top of the deck, and it goes over to us. We, of course, begin our turn by drawing these 2 crop cards, but it's really important to note that there is 1 more crop card left in the draw pile. And the way the endgame works is the moment a player draws the last card, they're going to finish their turn, and then everybody else is going to take 1 more turn. So what that means is the green player is going to draw this, finish their turn, and then both the blue player and us is going to get 1 more turn. That's actually pretty great for us. And looking at the things we just drew, this Wild Rice is also pretty darn great as far as trying to get something big like this Grumpy Melon grown and harvested. Although, man, maybe we kind of wish we had kept one of those really big ones like the Wary Squash, because we do have these genetic superworms which do a really good job of allowing us to get these things fertilized. On the other hand, it is important to note that once the game is over, everybody is going to immediately harvest everything in front of them that is fully fertilized. And if we have the last turn of the game, and it looks like we probably will, if we put this Wild Rice down, it needs 0 fertilizer, so it would just immediately fertilize itself. So I think we might just hold on to this to grab 4 points at the very end of the game. I think the first thing we should do is try to attack the green player. The blue player has definitely been set back quite a ways. Green is our biggest competition. Let's activate this Thresher, which lets us clear a planted crop, but they're going to get all fertilizer that's on that back into their hand. And that does give us an interesting decision. We could thresh this Sassy Wheat and not give them any fertilizer back into their hand, or we could do this Bodacious Broccoli. Now, when we think about the earning potential, if we get rid of this, then they could spend 2 fertilizer to get 8 money. But if we get rid of this, they could spend 1 fertilizer to get 4. It's the same ratio, but it's less of a top value. I think it does make sense for us to thresh this Bodacious Broccoli. This fertilizer goes back into their hand. They only have 1 other one, and we know they can only draw 1 at the beginning of their other turn. I think this is probably the best thing for us to curb the amount of max points that the green player might get. So let's now look at the rest of our hand, and we're actually in kind of a weird situation because we must fertilize something, and right now we don't have anything in front of us. So we could do something like put this Grumpy Melon down, but what we really want to do is toss both of these genetic superworms on there, because I believe the way they work, they each reduce the amount of fertilizer by 1 for for that card and other farmer cards. I think they double up, and essentially if I put both of them on this Grumpy Melon, it'd be worth 4 fertilizer because they would count for each other twice. And if we put this Grumpy Melon down and we fertilized it, well, that's a bit of a waste in that case. Also, if we do that, we are just such a huge target for the green player in particular to try and discard this out from our area. So we don't really want to leave any low-hanging fruit. We could throw this Wild Rice, but that's also a really great target. I just kind of feel like we almost don't want to put anything down, but if we don't put anything down, then we're not going to be able to fertilize anything of ourselves, and we have to fertilize something of our opponents. And I think considering how hard the blue player got hit earlier, I think we could probably help them out and it wouldn't hurt us too much. So let's go ahead and spend this sassy wheat to actually fertilize one of their things down in their area, and then on our last turn, we could just play all of these cards. These will be our 2 farmer cards. Hopefully we don't draw a particularly good one that we'd want to play on the next turn, and that would be 14 points for us on that final turn. Definitely a good sneak attack to grab a whole bunch of money. So I think that's a good plan. We'll use this as fertilizer. When we look at our target options down here for the blue player, it really isn't that much of a difference. Over here, it's just 1 fertilizer to get this 8 points, and this is 1 fertilizer to get the 7 points, but we know that the blue player has 2 crop cards in their hand, so they could have fully fertilized both of these anyway. This is a slightly lower number, so we'll go ahead and throw it down here onto the slug-out corn, and with that, our turn is going to be over. We're going to draw 1 farmer card into our hand. Oh my gosh, it's another genetic superworm. Okay, well, we have 3 of them in our hand. We can only play 2 on our final turn of the game, so that's fine. Green starts what will be their last turn by drawing the final crop card from the top of the deck. We don't shuffle up the discards or anything. They don't get any more, and they are now going to take their turn, and the end game is officially triggered, so blue and red, us, are going to get 1 more turn, and then the game will end. Green begins by playing this farmer card, Foreclosure, and what it says down here is they give another player any 2 crop cards from their hand, but then they steal a planted crop from that player. Now, you know that they would want to target us, but we kind of strategically made sure we had no crops in front of us on our turn because we figured somebody would probably try to steal them. So they look to the unfortunate blue player down here, and they say that they're going to steal this, and it gets stolen with all the fertilizer. But in the process of doing that, they do have to give them these 2 crop cards for their final turn of the game from their hand. And at this point, the green player is also going to play this, oops, I'm sorry, shouldn't have shown that, but doesn't really matter. They're going to play this Zippy Carrot, spoilers, as fertilizer for the sassy wheat over here. And green's final action will be to play a second farmer card. This one's called Farm Futures. We've seen it before. It's the one that let people draw 2 crop cards, but there are no crop cards to be drawn at this point, so they're going to do the second thing, which says they could score Farm Futures. It says if scored, it's going to add 1 money per unique crop card in the score pile, so we're just going to add this into the score pile. It's now the blue player's turn, but they don't draw any crop cards, of course, because that deck is depleted. Before they do anything else, they are going to play this farmer card, which is Dust Bowl. We've seen this one before. They need to discard another farmer card, and in order to do that, they're going to get rid of this crop rotation. And what the Dust Bowl does, as we well know, is it clears everything that's not protected out from the board. Now, this obviously doesn't hurt us. We're once again very happy. We strategically fertilized their thing over here. They're not even going to get the benefit of it because the green player stole it and did not put anything out here for us to grab. So all of these are just going to get cleared. This really hurt the green player. I guess it's a bit of a tit for tat. The green player is the one that hurt the blue player so bad. But then down here with this helpful tater, it is going to get cleared. But if you remember, the blue player put this crop insurance down. So even though these go away, they are going to get to score this 6 money as insurance. So it was not really that bad at all for the blue player in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, we made out sort of the best from that, but yeah, definitely a big Dust Bowl. At this point, the blue player has no farmer cards left, and they only have 4 crop cards in their hand. They are going to play this Grumpy Melon down, and they're going to use the other 3 all as fertilizer. They are not going to be able to harvest this on this turn, but again, if it still looks like this at the end of the game, which it likely will, they would harvest it because it is fully fertilized, so it's definitely a good move for them, and it goes on to us for the last turn of the game. Well, it looks like that plan I came up with last turn worked out pretty well for us. We didn't lose anything on the table, but there is something that we forgot to keep in mind, and that is that we must fertilize at least 1 thing on our turn, and these genetic superworms do not count as fertilizer. So that means that we can't do that plan. We were going to do the wild rice as planted down, and then the grumpy melon with both of these, well, not all 3, but just 2 of these genetic superworms, which would count for themselves and the other one twice to bring the total fertilizer cost down to 0, but we haven't fertilized anything. And in order to actually legally go with the rules of the game, we have to fertilize something, which means I think we have to use this to fertilize on this thing right here. So if we do that without this other genetic superworm, this is legal. It's essentially a 4-point mistake that I realized I don't think there's really anything I could have done about it. If I maybe tried to save a card in my hand like that, that flame fruit, then the thing that we killed would have gone over to the green player and they could potentially have scored 5 more points. So I guess ultimately this is probably slightly better for us in general, and that is just how our turn is going to end. So this genetic superworm reduces the required fertilizer down to 2, and this wild rice, oops, I forgot to turn it the correct way, it is going to give us 2 fertilizer here. The game now ends, and everybody is going to harvest all of their fertilized stuff in front of them. So this successfully fertilizes, goes into our score pile over here. and blue also successfully harvests this Grumpy Melon into their score pile. Everything is now officially over, so let's count out the points. Here we can see all the crop and farmer cards that got scored throughout the game. When we add all of ours up, and we definitely got more stuff into our pile than anybody else, we ended the game with 44 points. The green player ended the game with 38 points, and you'll notice this farm futures, it gives them $1 for each different type of crop they have in their area. Well, they just had 3. It's the stinking truffle, the sluggo corn, and the wary squash, so that gave them the extra 3, but it meant at 38, that's a little bit under where we were at with 44. And finally, we have the blue player here. When they total their stuff up, they have 41 points. So that means we came in first place with the victory. So it's 44 to 41 to 38, relatively close overall, and that ends the game. Well, I hope you enjoyed this playthrough. I think it did a pretty good job of showing off the various aspects to this game, including the hand management that goes into every single turn. You've got those farmer cards, of which you can only play 2 a turn, and you're going to get 1 at the end of every single turn, as well as the crop cards, where you get 2 at the beginning of each turn. Now, those farmer cards, it seems like their power level varies, but it also varies with the situational nature of that card. For instance, the ones that can be used all the time are relatively low power, like the irrigation, and then there's the one that just wipes the whole board clean and can rip the protection off of plants. Well, that one affects everybody indiscriminately, so the power of it is going to be balanced, I think, by the situational nature, where you're only going to be playing this when it's really going to affect your opponents more than it's going to affect you, hopefully in a really big way. And then talking about the crops, you could do a couple different things. You could put a whole bunch of crops out. It's really easy, and you just figure your opponents won't be able to mess with all of them unless, of course, they wipe them all away with that Dust Devil, versus really investing in like one crop that needs a bunch of fertilizer. And it's interesting because when you do that big investment, the ratio of fertilizer to money is actually worse than the really small cards, but you can do more interesting farmer card synergies with those really big crops, because you could do things like pulling that 4 fertilizer back into your hand to use again immediately. That's a really huge shift of power and resources when you're playing the game. And that card is not particularly good at pulling, it's not particularly as effective when you're going to pull 1 fertilizer off of one of those sassy wheats. It's still not bad, but it's way better when you invest in the really big one. And it was interesting to see the different players doing those different things. Like, I tried to go a little bit more with the swarm of smaller stuff, although I did score, I think, a couple of big ones in there at some point in the game. And then some of the other players just went with the really big ones. And at the end, the scores were somewhat similar. I mean, we obviously won. A big turning point to this game was the blue player just kind of dragging their heels, not getting that squash cashed in. I think if they had prioritized getting that done and not just assumed they were safe and fine behind that protection, I think they would have won the game. That was 18 money. It's a really big deal. But the longer they waited, the more likely somebody was to really mess with it, and that's what ended up happening. Green just messed those up, took those all away, and I guess at the end of the day, the green player, they didn't actually fare that well, but it seemed like the right thing for them to do in that moment. And as you can see, this is a highly interactive game with those cards. You could definitely call them take that cards, in the fact that they can really mess up the plans of your opponents, but you know they're there, you know there's lots of them, so you can play around that, try to use the protection, or just swarm, like I said. So I don't think there's too much else I want to say. This was a pretty good playthrough of the game, I think, and let's close this out. I'd love to thank everybody who's been supporting my channel through Patreon, including the producer level pledges. If you too would like to directly support the channel, you could do so at patreon.com/JonGetsGames. Also, if you'd like to see more full game playthroughs like this one, as well as in-depth board game reviews and vlogs, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.